This is Suit Up Sports.
Suit Up Sports.
Where opinions are as sharp as a tailored suit. No fluff, no gimmicks, just unfiltered, hard-hitting takes on sports and a whole lot more. It's time to suit up. Now here's your host, DJ the Suit Stout.
Welcome to Suit Up Sports. I'm DJ the Suit Stout, along with 10-year NFL vet Frank Garcia. And joining us right out of the gate today, our resident golf guru, Charlie Nance, also voice of the show. That sexy voice you hear on our show open happens to be Charlie. He's right now driving in his not as nice car as what John Beeson was in last week, but he's in, I'm sure, his Fred Caldwell Chevrolet, and probably on the way to the radio station. Charlie, how you doing, brother?
Man, I'm doing good. I'd be doing better if we were at least 2-2 today, instead of I just got to call my son is working at the Ryder Cup this week, and he wants to revoke citizenship on about 4 people.
I hear you, man. So I was telling Frank earlier, I've been in meetings and all over the place this morning, and I'm in and out. I'm trying to do work on my phone while I'm driving and in between meetings and hustle to get back home. So I haven't got to watch a whole lot of the Ryder Cup, but I did learn something today that I've never done before, and that was how to silence a conversation on my text messages. Because this text strand that you and me and our buddy Nico are on had about 100 on it, and then I was like, every time I try to send a snapshot of a picture to a client or a email or a text, I kept getting all these text messages. So I went in and learned how to do it. And which was great because then I didn't get bothered by it. But then when I came out of my last meeting, I had 200 text messages. You boys have been texting today. This golf this morning must have been pretty impressive or not impressive. But I know we're down 3-1 after the first session.
Yeah, and it started out, I got to tell you, and I think I even sent you a text this morning. The opening tee shot from DeChambeau in that environment where he almost drove the green and then rolled in a 20-foot birdie. It was about as an electric, a sports moment, forget golf, as electric a sports moment as I've been a part of all year. And I was like, let's go. And then that was it. I don't think we made another birdie until 10 o'clock.
Yeah.
It was just awful.
Yeah. I mean, I was kind of trying to watch it while I'm driving and amongst 80 other things. And that was incredible. And then you think, all right, now the crowd's in it. They're fired up. We got off to as good of a start as you could hope for. And then it seemed like from there, we even had to hold on just to get the 1 point we got.
Yeah. And they tried to give that away. Look, I think we need to start paying attention to a couple of really amazing duos that the Europeans have. I remember when the Ryder Cup really started to get in its heyday. You had the famous Spanish Armada that was Seve Ballesteros and Jose Maria Olazabal. You had Lee Westwood and Colin Montgomery. These were a couple of teams that you just wanted no part of in the Ryder Cup. And right now, you want no part of Rory McIlroy and Tommy Fleetwood. And I promise you don't want to be within 10 miles of Jon Rahm and Tyrrell Hatton. I think it's kind of underreported. Rahm and Hatton are on the same team with Liv. So they're in, even though they may not play alternate shot, they are in that team environment together week in, week out. And I think they're absolutely dangerous.
And what does that say about the PGA? Because you look at a lot of the players, American players, they chose the PGA over the Liv. And yet you see, when it comes down to it, they don't have that moxie that, maybe, some players in the past have had. And it just seems like, when it's time to hit a big shot, they come up short.
I don't know if it's as much a Liv thing, Frank. I got to thinking about this today I'm not one of these people that goes, oh God, I'm all excited. Russell Henley's on the team. Oh, look at how consistent Russell Henley is. I think consistent is a word on the PGA Tour that kind of hides a dirty little secret. The PGA Tour is populated with a boatload of dudes who have figured out a way that, I can cash really nice checks finishing somewhere between 5 and 15. I can get a lot of Ryder Cup points between 5 and 15. But when I look at somebody like Russell Henley, who, what has he gotten, 1 win in the last couple of years? I mean, he just doesn't stand out to me. And what that tells me is he's content with losing, and he doesn't know how to close the deal. And when we're trying to start things off in foursomes, I really think it's a mistake, number one, to send out rookies, like they did. And number two, send out guys who don't know how to close the deal. I would have felt much better with J.J. Spawn going out with Scotty Scheffler. Scheffler was completely betrayed by Henley. He couldn't get anything started today because of that. And then when he did set up Henley, for putts, Henley's reputation is, he can roll his rock. He couldn't roll the damn thing today. And all Spawn has showed me this year is he can win a U.S. Open. He can lose in a playoff at the TPC, but he was there to win the Players. And then he won a FedEx tournament. That guy knows how to close the deal, knows how to get it done. And I would have put him out there instead of Henley for sure.
Let's talk about the afternoon session and first of all, the format, which is your own ball, right? And in the afternoon, each guy's playing their own ball. And what do you think about who the United States are throwing out there this afternoon? Any questions?
Especially after what we saw this morning.
Yeah.
I was really puzzled at the choice of sitting Schauffele. If nothing else, Schauffele and Cantlay are the only people that got a point. And down the stretch, who was hitting quality shot after quality shot? It wasn't Patrick Cantlay. It was Schauffele. That match would have been over earlier if Cantlay could have made a putt.
Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead, Frank.
Yeah, let's talk about the disappointment that was America this morning, and some of these shots and these players. Charlie, it just seems like there's some guys, and I know we talked about this. We've been texting back and forth. The major champion winners have that something inside them that they want it. When you look at what Keegan Bradley has put out there this afternoon, I don't know what his method to the madness is. And maybe he knows something about these teams and the way that they gravitate towards each other, but there was no synergy this morning. There was no synergy between the U.S. and their partners versus when you looked at the Europeans, they were dancing around like they had butterflies, flying through the fields. It looked like they were having fun. It looked like it was a chore for the Americans to get out there. And I'm not sure that the synergy is going to be there this afternoon either.
Charlie, we lost your video. We don't see.
Sorry, there we go. Sorry. Yeah, no, sorry. There's two ways to look at it when you're setting up foursomes. You can either set up with opposites, and you're not going to think this is opposites, but in a way it is. Bryson DeChambeau is such a long ball hitter, but Justin Thomas, statistically speaking, is the best wedge guy on tour, or one of the best wedge guys on tour. So in that case, you were pairing opposites together. Whereas if you look at the European squad, Rahm and Hatton are essentially the same guy. And so it's, those are the two different ways you can set up foursomes. I just don't know if we have enough of the same guy to pair with one another. You know what I'm saying? I mean, we have a lot of opposites. We don't have a lot of same guys.
Right. Let's talk about J.J. Spawn and what he's done this year. I mean, he goes out and wins a major, beats an incredible field. He comes to the Ryder Cup and, he takes Scheffler to extra holes and great match. And, but his year, he's arguably the player of the year on the PGA. And on, I believe it's the first or second hole, he hits one to about 2 feet. Talk about this guy, his moxie, his nerve, and, where he's come from and how he's gotten there.
Look, I couldn't have, before this season started, if J.J. Spawn would have walked into a room with a T-shirt that said, "Hello, my name is J.J. Spawn," I wouldn't have known who he was. But he goes out and, in the Players, he took Rory to an extra day. And even though he botched the playoff, I don't care. He was still there. He was one of the last two dudes standing at that. Mm-hmm. And that's a big time golf tournament. And then what he did on Sunday in that mess at Oakmont may stand the test of time as one of the best back nines that we'll ever see under those conditions, especially recovering after he just was kissing the tournament goodbye on the front. What that told me is there was no quit in the dude. And that, that takes a lot not to give up when you feel it slipping away, and then to believe in yourself like that. And then didn't he win in Memphis as well? A FedEx Cup playoff event. So, if Scotty Scheffler wasn't around, for sure, Frank, he'd be the best American on the PGA Tour this year, hands down.
And Scheffler and Spahn are playing together right now against Straka and Rahm, so that'll be a big group to watch today.
That's really kind of the most favorable match the U.S. has to win, because when you look at the other ones, they don't look to be the favorites going into that.
No, and listen, the with what you got, DeChambeau and Griffin against Fleetwood and Rose. Rose is about as mentally tough as any guy we've seen. He's been here, he's done that before. Justin Thomas and Cam Young. Justin Thomas,
he played like crap this morning.
Exactly. So who knows?
The only reason why Thomas is out there, the only thing I think is among the guys who are on that team, he's the only guy that seems to have that fire that he could get a crowd pumped, and that if he gets rolling and the crowd gets rolling, that they could really feed off one another. I think that's the only reason why he's out there, because I'm with you, Frank. I wouldn't have put him back out.
Well, I mean, Charlie, let's talk about you mentioned the crowd. Let's talk about it, because playing in New York, can be a good thing or a bad thing. And if you're American, and if you're playing well, it's going to be a great thing, because they're going to back you. They're going to chant for you. They're going to put a lot of pressure on the Europeans. But that crowd could turn very quickly, and they could start throwing stones and making you feel the pressure. It feels like if the U.S. doesn't do something this afternoon, this crowd may turn.
Yeah, and New York does not accept mediocrity. They do not accept what they consider to be choking. They will not tolerate it. They don't care if it's America or not, and especially the later it goes, the more overserved they become. So, I'm with you. I think it's vital that the U.S., especially with the first couple of matches this afternoon, just show a lot of moxie and a lot of heart. It just seemed like once it started to turn south, and let's not take anything away. I mean, you had two groups. What was it that I think Rory's group was 5 under through 7, and Ludwig's group was 7 under through 10 or something, and playing alternate shot. I mean, Frank and you and I both know that's beyond phenomenal. So some of that is just, what can you do? But we also were losing holes. Those guys were bogeying holes while they were making birdie. So,
it's
got to show me a little something.
What's crazy right now, Charlie, is that Trump's, showed up this morning as he flew Air Force One over the crowd and got a big cheer, big roar, from the New Yorkers, but shows up and is introducing, the players as they come out, shaking their hands. And, it's almost like, I would have rather had Keegan Bradley play in this event and had Trump as the coach.
Yeah.
I see what you're saying, but I honestly think Keegan made the right call in this respect. Although I would have had no trouble with him picking himself on paper, I thought he played well enough. No problem with that. But the problem would have been, he would have been the number one story, the number one distraction.
Yeah.
It would have been every move he made on and off the course would have been micro-analyzed. I think the best move he could have made was the one he did make, and say, hey, look, I was picked to be the captain. I'm going to be the best captain I can be. I think that if he had chosen to play, I mean, the first bad shot that he hit, oh my gosh, did Keegan make the mistake picking himself and not so-and-so? And that wouldn't have served anybody.
Well, it's funny. Frank just brought up President Trump, and I think Keegan should stay the captain, but he should have had Trump play, because I think Trump putts better than a lot of these guys, and that's number one. And number two, I can guarantee you this: I can't guarantee you anything about this afternoon except one thing: if the Americans win, I can guarantee you Trump's going to take full credit for it. That he showed up, he got them fired up. Which, by the way, he is. He's out there getting the guys.
Well, they just buried the first hole, taking one up lead.
So
JJ Spahn showed a little emotion.
He did. So Trump may be onto something. But yeah, United States just birdied the first hole. Scheffler and Spahn to take the early lead, but we did that this morning, so now we got to hang on to it.
Have you guys have seen the YouTube videos with him and DeChambeau?
Oh yeah,
Break 60, I think is what it's called, and he can't hit the ball very far, and he has the most awkward putting stroke I've ever seen. But damn if they don't go in.
Well, he also has a guy that rides about 200 yards in front of him that takes his balls out of the bunkers and gives them a favorable out.
I don't know about that.
I want one of those guys. No, I'm kidding. He can golf. He can golf. So, Charlie, give us, just looking into the weekend, what is the format tomorrow? Is it the same as today?
You're gonna go foursomes or alternate shot in the morning, and then the afternoon session will be 4-ball. One of these sessions, either today, this afternoon, or tomorrow morning, we have to win 3-1. We do.
Gotcha. Well, hopefully they get off to a good start here today. We'll have you back on Monday to recap it. Hopefully it's a celebratory recap for not just the United States, hopefully for Panthers as well. We'll see. Not putting my eggs in that basket, but you never know. So we'll see you Monday. Have a good weekend. Try to keep your temper down if we're not doing well.
And
stay off your phone.
And we'll keep the text to a minimum for him.
Please.
We'll start our own chat, Charlie.
Look, I just love I love that DJ's never changed. He's never going to add an R to celebratory. That's fantastic.
No, I know. Even when I said it, I knew I forgot it. But
he's very celebratory.
It does until we win. If we win, I'll add that R. Right now, I put a W in there, trying to hope that they win.
Yeah, you've been married long enough that celebratory is all about now.
That's right.
Yeah, you ain't lying, brother. That is the truest thing you said today. Have a good weekend, brother.
Y'all be good.
All right,
see you, buddy. Thank you, Charlie Nance, for joining us. Yeah, he's on the way to work, and I'm sure he'll have this on in the background at the radio station.
Oh, my gosh. I don't know. And there's probably a handful of guys that I've met that love golf as much as he does.
Yeah, I mean, he eats, breathes, and I'll tell you this too, his son Hogan, who he says working up there at the Ryder Cup this weekend, that they are a golf family, and his dad was the same way. And like I said, I'm later to the game, but the Ryder Cup I still get pumped up for, and I was up early this morning to watch right away. And
you were the first tech to start this off, by the way.
Yeah, but my God, I didn't know I was going to impregnate the group.
I don't know.
Just had one after another.
Between you this morning and Conrad last night with the drunk text.
I don't really read those.
It was kind of I could when you text, I can feel your anger or your angst or where you're at because of how you come back. It's like I could literally be on a text chain with you and Conrad and know exactly how you're saying that to him.
Oh yeah,
and what the tone of that text is.
No doubt about it. And my thumbs, because I type hard, man. My phone has a extra screen protector on it because I type pretty hard. So let's transition into football. This weekend, again, we've got some really big games that I'm excited about. Kicks off tonight with Florida State at Virginia. Virginia is one of those scrappy teams. They seem to be better this year than they were last year. Florida State has been off to a great start, obviously whipping Alabama game 1. They've really played nobody since. So now they take it on the road for the first time this year. A lot of people think this could be a trap game because they play Miami next week. Miami doesn't have an easy game this week either. But Florida State, Virginia tonight. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, two teams that have really, stepped it up. But the difference is Florida State has talent, right? Virginia has won 3. They're 3-1. I don't know who they've beaten, right? It's like, this is going to be really their first test.
Yep.
And playing up in Virginia is maybe kind of, a little docile crowd. It's not going to be hostile. You're not going to get the blood flowing if you're at a visiting team like you would be going if you were going to, let's say, an Alabama or an Ohio State, one of these big stadiums. So I could see that being a little bit of a letdown, for Florida State. But at the end of the day, Florida State are bigger, faster, stronger than Virginia. They're favored by 7 points.
6.5. Yeah.
6.5, 7 points. And I just don't see this game being close. Maybe for the first half, but Buck used to say this all the time, and I agree with him. When the height and the heart wear off, that's when you become a football player. And you can make yourself bigger, faster, stronger for about a quarter or two.
Yep.
But then eventually the athlete starts taking over and the other team starts getting the momentum. If Virginia wants to win this game, Florida State's gonna have to help them win a little bit. And that means they'd have to show up not prepared. They'd have to show up lethargic. They'd have to be looking ahead. And if, their coach has done anything this year, it feels like, last year they kind of went through it, but they've come out of the gate strong this year. And I can't believe that they're going to have a letdown, because I think that's the only thing that he's got to be preaching to them all week is, let's start fast. Let's start fast. This is what we do. Don't worry about who we're playing. We play to our expectations. And if they do that, I think they win this by 2 touchdowns easy.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, people forget that 2 years ago, Florida State, was undefeated until the last game of the season.
That's right.
A lot of people think they got screwed out of the playoffs, and then after the season,
when the coach came out like a big victim, which I didn't appreciate. But he was standing up for his team,
and then
they
fell on their face last year, which didn't look good at all. But to come out with the big win against Alabama, they've looked good. They've got, I love Castellanos at quarterback. I think they've got a really good quarterback this year where they did not have that last year. So I agree with you. I think they're going to go on the road, and I know that they may look ahead a little bit to next week, but I think Florida State is good enough to take care of business, and I think they've got something to prove. And I think, as a coach and a player, when you've got that chip on your shoulder, it helps you avoid traps. And I think,
and I feel like that's Florida State's. We let this get away from us 2 years ago.
Yep.
Even though this is a different team, that hurt and sting is still there for some of these guys. And if you're a junior or a senior now and you were on that team, you're not going to let these other players forget about that.
That's right.
And you're going to continue to rehash those things, as well as the coach who's going to try to put into them that
one loss could ruin the season.
One loss, we're done.
It killed us 2 years ago.
That's exactly right.
Again.
So, we have to take every game serious. We have to, approach each game like it's the last, and go out there and win. But I think Florida State has the talent. I like their quarterback. He gives you that spark that maybe they didn't have last year.
He can run it. He can throw it.
That's right.
He's
and
tough.
When you have a quarterback that's the best athlete on the field, you tend to not, he can tend to bail you out of plays. Ask South Carolina when, their quarterback was, steps up. So when Lenore Sellers steps up, they're a different football team.
Oh, no doubt.
Right? And the same thing with Florida State. They have a guy now that can take over a game, and it'll be interesting to see if Virginia has anything for them.
The game of the weekend that I'm looking forward to, there's several, but the one that I'm really, really interested to see tomorrow is Alabama at Georgia. And who
are these teams?
Yeah, because we saw Georgia win a tough game at Tennessee, which was their first real competition they played thus far. And Tennessee punched them in the mouth right away, and Georgia just does what they do. They just continue to stay in the game, and that was a great game, back and forth. And Georgia proved a lot to me on that that day. Alabama losing the way they did at Florida State, they've seemed to right the ship some, but against bad competition. So we really don't know what they have. So you just nailed it. To me, this is a game where we're going to find out a lot about both teams, but we're really going to find out, is Alabama, or are they somebody that we shouldn't even be paying attention? And by the way, Georgia's only a 2.5 favorite in that surprised me.
This is a huge game for Caleb DeBoer.
Yep.
As a second-year coach, taking over a program from the GOAT, Nick Saban.
Yep.
Alabama is not going to be patient for very long. They expect to win every game. When you talk about SEC championships, that's a given.
Yeah.
They're concerned with national championships, and they're a spoiled fan base because of what they were able to accomplish under Saban. So when you come into this game, it's going to be interesting to see what Alabama shows up, because they're going to have the athletes out there. Are they going to be motivated? Are they going to be disciplined? Are they going to step up to the plate against a Georgia team that really hasn't, faltered this year? And, Kirby Smart's going to have these guys ready. Georgia plays probably as good as defense as any team in the country. They have since he's been there. You look at the NFL teams, they're scattered with NFL talent. You look at the offensive players in the NFL, they're scattered with Alabama and Georgia talent.
Yep.
So when you look at it's just going to be, what coach prepares them for the bigger moment. And I feel like I don't think that DeBoer has the ear of his team yet. He's still trying to figure them out. And it feels like Kirby Smart has a little bit of handle on his guys where they're going to play for him a little bit more than they'd play for DeBoer.
Well, here's what I think the game could come down to, because Georgia against Tennessee showed that they are susceptible to giving up some points. I mean, Tennessee scored a bunch on them.
Tennessee's a different animal.
Well, that no doubt. And that's what that was my point, was that I'm not sure Alabama has a quarterback. And, with Milroe last year, they couldn't do a lot of the things that DeBoer wanted to do. And I've watched Alabama now 2 games, and I just am not sold they have a quarterback. And when you don't have a quarterback against Georgia, it's going to be a long day. So I think, Kirby Smart is now the best in the business, I think, at least in the SEC. And listen, if Alabama loses this game, I think there'll only be one seat that's hotter in the country than his, and that's Napier in Florida. So this is a huge game, and that's why I'm so fired up to see it, because those SEC games are always great. Alabama, Georgia, usually, but we're going to find out a lot about Alabama this weekend. Another game that's going to be huge this weekend on two teams. One you're more familiar with from being out in the West Coast. Oregon State comes to Penn State, and look, again, neither team has really played any great competition yet.
You're talking about Oregon, not Oregon State.
Oregon.
The Ducks.
The Ducks. And, both teams on paper look really, really good. Penn State coming off, playoff loss last year to Notre Dame that just missed the national championship. Oregon's one of those teams who always seems to be able to score, but we don't know on defense if they can stop somebody from scoring. This ought to be an interesting game. Two good quarterbacks, two guys that'll both be drafted in the first probably two to three rounds.
This isn't the same Oregon team that we're used to seeing. It's like the equivalent of Notre Dame stepping up to play Alabama or Georgia, or the big boys. What did we used to say about Notre Dame? They don't have the guys in the middle to stop, the men that Alabama and the SEC have. Penn State is built like an SEC team. They have big physical guys. They have an athletic quarterback, maybe the best in the country. They have playmakers. Last year, Oregon beat them, if you remember.
Yep.
At Penn State, if I'm not mistaken. I don't remember.
Maybe it was Oregon.
You're right. It was at Oregon. It was early in the season. Might have been the first or second game that they played. Very similar to the matchup they're having now. But Oregon up front and interior with their offense and defensive line, they're built different than they have been, because they know they have to compete with the big boys in the Big Ten. They have the Ohio States, the Wisconsins, the guys are going to be, we're going to line up and we're going to run over you. So they had to go out and recruit like that. It's no longer West Coast offenses that are going to throw the ball, be fancy. You're going to throw the 3-yard pass, get it out of your hand and move down the field. You're going to have to stop the run. And Oregon has been built to stop the run. Penn State runs the ball as efficiently and as effectively as everybody else. If you remember in that game, they had a couple of key turnovers early in the game last year and were able to jump out and get in front. If Penn State starts fast, which is going to be tough for Oregon, this is going to be really their first challenge on the road. And that the way that you operate as an offense on the road is a lot more different than when you're at home. They're having a whiteout. Penn State's going to be hyped. They want revenge from last year. They want to prove to everybody that they're one of the top teams in the country, because I'm still not convinced they are. So I'm one of those guys that I'm super interested in this game, because it's going to be a great indicator. Is this the same Oregon team that we saw last year that ran the table until they got to an Ohio State team that was just hot as can be? Or is this an Oregon team that is just having a down year? Because they're going to spend money. They're going to have athletes. They're going to have Frisbee catching dogs. But when we looked at that game against Ohio State last year, the biggest difference was in size in their secondary. Their secondary was small. And Ohio State Smith could just go right over the top of everybody. And Oregon was in great position. They just couldn't reach the height that Smith could. And he was the difference maker in that game. So I'm wondering if they corrected that and adjusted to play and challenge these elite teams, because that's where the matchups are going to, win or lose in these games. Because up front, they're going to be able to stand toe to toe, right? Who's going to be the difference makers for these teams in these games? And I kind of like Penn State just because of the experience of the quarterback, but and the home field advantage. I like Penn State in a close one.
I love Oregon's quarterback, and I'm not a believer in Oregon yet. I think after this game we'll know a lot more. Kind of like what Europe did to the United States today. When you take the crowd out of it pretty early, it's a big help to the visiting team. And I think if Oregon can get off to a good start and take the crowd out a little bit, then I think they've got a shot. But I'm excited to watch that one.
Have you ever been to Happy Valley?
I haven't, but I'm going on October 11th, I believe.
So there's nothing else there. This is a college town right in the middle of kind of nowhere. But it is a town built around this university. And everybody in that university is waiting for this game. And they probably have been for 2 weeks. Probably for, since they played the last time.
Oh yeah. No, since the season was over.
This is their marquee matchup. And Penn State is going to have some tough, they have a tough schedule. but this is the first of that tough schedule. And if you want to be the best, you got to beat them all.
Yep.
And, Oregon's going to be one of those teams that is contending in the Big Ten just because of the division they play in. But it'll be interesting to see, at the end of the season, where these two teams, how they grow, where they're at right now. But I do think Penn State has the more experience. So that's why the only reason I'm leaning towards, and the home field advantage.
Two more games in college that I want to talk about before we switch over to the NFL. This game, LSU versus Ole Miss, is going to be interesting because, LSU is undefeated. They had what we thought at the time a big win at Clemson, which now doesn't look nearly as big because Clemson has not done very well since then. Ole Miss, they're also undefeated. At home, they can always score points. But to me, we're going to find out which one of these two teams are for real. And a funny story, I don't know if you saw this, but Lane Kiffin's daughter, who's very pretty, by the way, is dating the great linebacker from LSU. and when I don't know why she decided to come out with that this week, but I thought Lane Kiffin look, like or hate Lane Kiffin, I think he's pretty funny. And after that all broke, it was all over social media. Lane posted a picture of him and his daughter when she was a little girl, and he said, I don't care who she's dating, she'll still be rooting for Ole Miss on Saturday. And so, it's always the sad stories that are always kind of funny. I'm sure we'll hear that 15 times during the game, but I'm excited to watch that one. And then Notre Dame at Arkansas. Obviously, I'm a Notre Dame guy. Arkansas can score points. They have a good offense. I think Notre Dame will be able to do the same thing. I think both defenses leave a lot to be desired. Notre Dame's defense so far to me has been a huge disappointment. I know they lost a lot of guys to the NFL, but they replaced them with 4- and 5-star guys. So I know a lot of times it does take time.
So who do you like in this LSU Mississippi game?
LSU Mississippi game, and
that's one of the ones we want to talk about.
That'll be
right?
one of our picks later. But yeah, I think I'm going to take Ole Miss. LSU just hasn't. I don't know. There's something about their offense that they don't run the ball well. At least I'm not saying they can't, but so far I haven't been impressed with the running game. And I just think Lane Kiffin figures out a way to score points at home. Again, I don't think either defense is great. I think LSU's defense could end up being really good, but I think Ole Miss sneaks it out. It's only 1.5. It's only a 1.5 favorite for Ole Miss, but I think and again, we'll rattle through our picks at the end of the show, but I think I'm leaning Ole Miss in that one.
Brian Kelly has done nothing except for win regular season games since he's been in college football. True. Right? He has a knock of not winning the big one. Like he did last year. He had the team there like he did at Notre Dame. Couldn't win the big one, but he may, if I'm not mistaken, have, now that Saban's out of football, the winningest percentage for any active coach as the regular season goes along. He's a good coach. I hate the fake accent that he uses.
Well, he's just a clown a lot of the time.
Yeah, but his players play for him, and he gets the most out of them.
He does.
Right? So,
and Nussmeier's a great quarterback. I mean, that's the thing. We'll find out more about him, too. I mean, if he goes on the road to Ole Miss and they play well, Brian Kelly got really heated after their last game. A reporter asked him about their offense seemed to be struggling, and Brian Kelly went off on this guy. And the next day, he actually started his press conference apologizing about the way he reacted and whatever you want to think about that. But that's the one thing that does worry me a little bit about taking Ole Miss is that, that made me think a little bit that Brian Kelly and that offense are going to come out this week with a purpose, and they're going to want to show everybody that, our offense hasn't been great thus far, but we've got the guns to do it. Again, if they don't run the ball though, and listen, since Brian Kelly's been at LSU, their running game has not been what we're used to when it comes to LSU. They've had some great running backs come through there. So I think they're going to have to run the ball. And Ole Miss's defense is a defense that they should be able to get the running game going against. But I think that's going to be the key to their offense. I think they've got to establish the running game and then pass the ball downfield after that. But we'll see. If they can't establish a running game, I think it's definitely going to be a good game. I
mean, Lane Kiffin, I think is one of the, probably brighter minds on the offensive side, in college football. I believe he was at Texas a couple of years ago, as a liaison, kind of a, I don't think he was the coordinator, but I think he was, kind of one of the guys that gave it opinions and, got, them going in the right direction.
Mm-hmm.
He has, at Mississippi, what they've done there, he's turned this offense into, very similar to what Tennessee has done with Heupel. He's turned this into an offensive, juggernaut. They're going to throw Jackson Dart last year, was a huge difference maker for them. He could spread the field. And you see, he's going to have a bright future in the NFL. He's a very athletic guy. Maybe took too many risks in college.
Going to get his first start this week.
Yeah, he's going to get his first start. And you're going to see, maybe, him and his athleticism able to carry him. I think that's the one thing that Ole Miss is going to be lacking in a big game like this. When you have guys who are going to hunt quarterbacks on the other side, like LSU, you're going to be able to control the clock. Brian Kelly wants to run the football, as you pointed out earlier, just like you did at Notre Dame. He wants to control the clock, especially at the home. They're playing at Ole Miss, I believe.
They are.
So that's one of the things that travel is your defense, your special teams, and running the football are things that you can control the outcome. And I think it's going to be a very close one. I don't think it's going to be as high scoring as people think. Even though Ole Miss can sling it and they're going to score some points, it's going to come down to a handful of plays. Very similar to what you watch on Sundays when, a guy makes a play, a guy doesn't, has a turnover, tip ball, something like that. And I think it's going to be, an old-fashioned football game where there's a lot of punting going on. And, it'll be interesting to see who comes out ahead.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that game. And like I mentioned, the Notre Dame Arkansas game, Notre Dame's -4.5.
What's happening with them this year?
Well, here's what I think, and I think Notre Dame
they came out with a brutal schedule to start the season off.
Brutal schedule. They lost their first two games in the last minute of each game against Miami, who's turned out to be really, really good, and then at home, that was a heartbreaker against Texas A&M, who I think is really good. But even against Purdue last week, we gave up 30 points and they weren't 30 points when we were up 50-0. It was 30 points, or at least the bulk of those points were when it was still a football game. Mm-hmm. And so their defense just isn't clicking right now. And I don't know, a lot of times, like I said, defenses take a while to kind of find their groove. And I think Marcus Freeman is a good coach. And I think defense is his deal. So I would expect them to get better, but Arkansas has a really good offense. They have a very athletic quarterback. So I could see this being a shootout. And it's in Arkansas. So, we'll see. Again, Notre Dame at 4.5. I would lean towards Notre Dame, but I do know that with the way their defense has been playing, Arkansas can score. Now, Arkansas lost at Memphis last week in a high-scoring game. So, if Notre Dame decides this is the week their defense is going to show up, then I think Notre Dame covers that spread with ease. If it's the same defense we've seen, and again, two of the teams they've played are, I think, two of the top 5 teams in the country, and Miami and Texas A&M, definitely two of the top 10. So, but when it worried me a little bit watching a lot of the same issues against Purdue.
Yeah,
so
I do think there was a little bit of letdown. I'm going to disagree with you a little bit when it comes to defenses. Good defenses gel quickly. Find ball, see ball, tackle ball, stay in your lanes. Play fundamentally sound. There's not a whole lot of things that could, happen that one player can, go make a play and make the entire defense look good versus, offense. Everybody has to be clicking at the same time. So they don't have that guy up front to me that, some of these other elite teams have. They don't have the Miami defensive line. They don't have the guys that get after the quarterback. They have guys built to play the run, but not really get after the pass. Their team speed is lacking. Right. And I think that's the one thing that when you look at, these teams like that are going to play in the SEC, they have a guy at quarterback, and all these teams in the SEC have a guy at quarterback that can make defenses look really bad. Can Notre Dame corral him? Can they stop the run? And, there's no look pass for them anymore. I don't know what they've got to win out to even have a chance.
Yeah.
And every game is a playoff game for them.
Yep.
So if I think they fight their butts off, they love their coach.
Yep.
And I think they win this game. I don't know how, if it's going to be a shootout. It's hard to predict that, but Notre Dame just doesn't have that. They're just missing. I don't know what it is. It's hard to put your finger on. They're missing one thing that's tough to put your finger on.
I'll tell you one thing that's hurt them so far this year. They've dropped at least 6 that I can count interceptions that hit their DBs right in the hands. Texas A&M, besides that late call, that was a difference in the game.
There's a reason why those guys play defense.
Well, no doubt. But if they catch the ball, and those interceptions are huge. So that would be one thing I would say. If they get a chance to make a big play, well, that's what I'm saying. If you get a chance to make a big play, you got to make it, because we see, and whether it's NFL or college, one or two big plays can make the difference in the game.
Those are humongous plays, the momentum-changing plays.
Yep.
That change the outcome of games for sure. And if you're presented, I mean, you mark my words. All right. Every game, close game that we see, there's going to be a team that has an opportunity to make a play in a big moment. The teams that don't make those plays, the other team usually goes out and scores or takes advantage of that, right? The teams that make those plays in those big moments usually win the game.
Just look at the Philadelphia Eagles.
Right.
You know, I mean, they haven't even been playing that well yet, but they're 3-0 because at the end of football games, last week we saw them block 2 field goals. You know, they find a way to make a big play that wins a game. And that's why, that's why they're scary, because
somebody steps up every single week
game.
And they're just, they expect it.
Yep.
They expect somebody to step up and make a play.
Yep.
They're not going to, whether it's going to be a quarterback, whether it's going to be, a guy making the play to win in a defensive lineman and a blocked field goal, whatever it might be, they have a confidence and belief that they're going to do it versus it's almost like, luck or the ball bouncing your way.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I can't remember who said it, the harder I work, the luckier I get.
Right.
When it just, when things are going your way, it just seems that the ball bounces your way. And right now, those one or two plays like that could turn the tide for these teams. And Notre Dame has to make those plays, when those plays are presented. And, I don't know how, as a coach, it would be, you would make a lot of money if you could come up with a formula that say, you're going to start catching those interceptions that are hitting you right in the hands.
No doubt.
But you see when those players, they fall on the ground, they start pounding the floor. And what happens with the other team? They come right down the field and they score.
Yep.
Right.
When you miss your chance, it does seem like it always bites you.
That's right.
So, we'll see. That'll be another good game. And like I said, there's some others that we didn't get into that we'll cover when we do our picks here shortly. Let's go into the Carolina Panthers. Great win last week. Shut out the Falcons 30-0. I don't think anybody saw that coming. We
first shutout in 5 years. Last time they did it was 2020. They won 20-0 versus the Detroit Lions.
Yep. And here's the thing. We have been talking on this show about
they've had a winning season since.
Well, and right now they're off to a 1-2 start, so they need to win this game. But the thing about the Panthers is we talked about, last week Canales needed to get Bryce off to a good start and get him in tempo quickly, and he did. We talked about getting these young players to play, and guess what? The young players made plays last week. This week's going to bring a different challenge because injuries. So Wanham, our defensive end, out. Pat Jones, our defensive end, out. So Scorton stepped in for Jones last week, and Scorton, the rookie, the second-round pick, played great. Now we're going to have Princely in there on the other side, getting a lot more playing time as well as some other guys. It does look like they're going to get Turk Wharton back, who missed, who was great against Jacksonville, missed the last game with a hamstring. He practiced fully today, so hopefully he's going to come back. Xavier Legette's going to be out again this week, which I don't think anybody minds as of right now. I mean, let him sit and get his head right or hamstring right or whatever the reason he's out is. But before we dive into some of the offense and defense, one of the things that I'm going to be interested this week to see is when Legette's out, and Bryson Tremaine played a lot last week and had 2 catches on the first drive. They like him a lot. I like him a lot. David Moore, got some of those reps. We saw David Moore take Etienne's spot at punt return as well after Etienne muffed that, and I would think we probably see that again. But you've got a guy like Jimmy Horn Jr. on the practice squad, and he's been inactive the every game so far. They said he had a great week of practice this week. We don't know how he practices. We don't know what he's lacking. We don't know if he can run routes. We don't know any of that stuff, right? The coaching staff knows that. But I would think that if there was a week to give this kid a shot, it would be a week after you struggled on punt return. You've got Legette out. So and Horn does bring something that none of the other receivers we have brings, which is explosive speed. That he's a game breaker. You think they give him a shot this week, or you think they keep him?
The issue with the challenge with what you're saying is that if he's going to take up a spot on the active roster, it takes away from a spot.
Yep.
And when you're already dealing with injuries and you're depleted, now is not the time to go out there and try these new things. Right. So, if you're talking about the defense in particular, guys that are hurt, right, and the backups are coming in and the guys that are starting aren't that great anyways, you're going to need two guys to replace that one guy. Right. So the one guy that's out there, he might need a break halfway through. So
Chuba's questionable. I mean, I think he's going to play, but he's questionable with a calf too. So one of the things I would argue with you usually would be after the way Etienne played, he muffed a punt in preseason. He muffed one last week. I would make that swap out. But with Chuba having a questionable calf muscle, you can't take Etienne as your third running back out. So that makes sense.
That's right. That would be the challenge that they're going to have. And coaches, that we don't really see the strategy behind, the guys that are playing. And, that would be the challenge. I don't mind the logic of what you're saying, but it's the challenge of, having to strategize the entire roster of, well, who are we going to sit?
Right.
Right. And, the center last week, I thought was the biggest improvement that this line has seen.
I think he was the top rated center in pass blocking in the NFL. I think that's what I read.
I can see why, he's not the starter. But when it comes to running the football, he's a bigger body. He moves guys off the ball. He's not as athletic and fluid with his hips. He's not, the most efficient guy. But if you put a guy on him, he's going to knock guys out of the way. And they did last week. They ran the ball up the middle very successfully, and they gave him an opportunity. This offense didn't do they weren't the 30. The score of this game last week was very misleading. This offense did not light it up.
Well, they didn't have to, because two things. Number one,
they didn't light it up.
They got off to a good start, and they got up to a lead for the first time this year, which allowed them
because of the defense
to run the ball, no doubt. But they didn't have to air it out like they did when they were down by 20 against Arizona. This allowed them to have a more balanced offense, and I think that's why we saw our running game look well. Even Dowdle ran the ball well and hard last week, because the defense. You're totally right. The defense played great, and we wondered about the defense, and I don't think you were on there. I can't remember what day last week you were in the golf tournament, but I know you and I talked. Okay, you and I talked about this on Friday. Was that it was Friday. Excuse me, it was Friday. Okay, so Mark and I talked about it on Friday, but I think me and you talked a little bit about it on last Monday. But we've said that this is going to be a game where we're going to find out that even the apologists and the people who are saying, look, the Panthers defense looks to me to be better. And minus the 2 Etienne runs against Jacksonville, we would have held them to 110 yards. Then we go to Arizona against 2 good running backs and a running quarterback, and we held them to 100 yards. This is the game we said, okay, now we're going to find out if this defense is good against the run, because Atlanta's got the second best running back in the league. Their backup, Algier, is one of the best backup running backs in the league who has torched us in the past. And this defense stepped up. And Bobby Brown stepped up, and Derek Brown right now is playing back to his All-Pro.
I know the numbers are not going to show that, but
they did show it.
Hold on. No, they didn't.
Their defense numbers did show it. They're top 7 defense in the NFL now.
Hold on. They got ahead in the game 30-0, where Atlanta had to throw the ball almost every play. They
didn't have to throw the ball at 7-0. They didn't have to throw it at 10-0.
Penix played horribly.
He did play horribly.
And turned the ball over, and the defense scored, or basically gave 2 touchdowns. Once that happens in a game, the other offense is not going to say we're going to have to run the ball to get back into it.
Just look at the Panthers. Just look at the Panthers against
Bijan
Arizona.
Robinson averaged 5.5 yards a carry on 13 carries. He didn't touch the ball. Running the football is a cumulative effect. Right? It's not going to happen in the first quarter or second quarter at any level. You're not just going to say we're going to line. We don't have the Philadelphia Eagles offensive line. Those are cumulative effects when you're in control of the game. The Panthers played well. I'm not trying to discount that, but they are not the world beaters, or they have not turned a corner.
But nobody's saying they're world beaters.
They have not turned a corner where they're now stopping the run.
Well, we don't. I will say this: in 3 games, their run defense is now, and their total defense is top 10 in the NFL. Now, am I saying that their defense should be hanging a banner?
You think this is a top 10 defense in the NFL?
I'm just saying the numbers say they're a top 10 defense in the NFL.
Do you think this is a top 10 defense in the NFL?
No, but what I do think is they're a much improved defense from last year.
Numbers lie all the time.
No doubt, but I think they're a much improved defense from last year. And the only thing I'll say to your argument was 2 weeks ago, and the game 1 and game 2, when you were killing their run defense, game 1 in particular, and I brought up the same point that you just did. Well, heck, we didn't run the ball. We threw it every time Chuba did run it. He ran it for 8 yards, but we were down 14 points. So you argued then, and now you're using
I didn't
that
argue
same
the Panthers. I thought
against,
Chuba was the best player on this team.
but I'm not talking about best player. I'm talking about when you talked about when I said that
we're talking about this last game.
I understand that, but your argument for this game is different than what you said about the Panthers the first two games is all I'm pointing out. And what I'm saying is you're totally right. When we get up to a lead, and those two interceptions, the pick six and the other interception was late in the second half. So Atlanta could have ran the ball up more. You're totally right about Penix. He looked horrible. And I've told you I'm not sold on him anyway. I think he's got a great arm, but I don't know if he's got a great brain. And I don't know. And he looked scared in the pocket to me. There was and I'm sure you saw this. There was times where he had, looked to me, plenty of time, and he was getting rid of the ball quickly. So
he was throwing to check downs that were covered and not going through his progressions. And it didn't feel like Atlanta had a very good game.
You know who he reminded me of? He reminded me of watching Arch Manning the first few games, who I defend because he was missing guys at their feet, over their head. And I think a lot of that comes from happy feet, or just maybe not being confident in the pocket. Now, I do expect Atlanta to snap back this week, although they're playing the Redskins at home in Atlanta. But Daniels is out again. McLaurin, their best receiver's out. So that sets up nicely if you're a Falcon fan. But back to the Panthers, I do think that we have definitely seen an improvement from last year. And again, Turk Wharton, who played great against Jacksonville, missed the last two games. If he's back this week, which I think he's going to be, that'll be a big help. Bobby Brown looked great against the run stop. Derek Brown looks back to his all-pro ability. The linebackers Trevin Wallace, I thought, had his best game as a pro. I thought he played great, and I've been on his butt, but I thought he played great. But our DBs, and again, stats can lie, but both of them rank in the top 10 in DBs right now. If we do get to a point where we can it just shows, and was my point, it shows you how important, especially for a team like the Panthers, who definitely don't have a lot of depth, definitely don't have, a lot to build on after the first two games, but getting a lead and ahead in the game really does allow Canales to call a more even game. And I think that's why we saw Dowdle run the ball better. We saw Chuba run the ball better. Bryce only threw the ball, if I'm not mistaken, for 127 yards on 10 of 16 or 17.
16 of 24 for 121 yards.
Yeah.
With a 5-yard average.
Right. Because we didn't have to do it.
But
we didn't have, but my point to you is we didn't have to. In the game before that, when he threw for 300 and whatever yards, was because he threw it 55 times because we were down 20 points. So getting a lead for this team and getting off to a quick start is crucial. And I think that's in New England, it's going to be really important because we saw New England last week play awful against a not very good Steeler team. We saw 5 turnovers. Drake May, we saw him throw 2 or 3 interceptions right to Pittsburgh that they dropped. So if we can go in there and again, now our other rookie linebacker is going to have to step in with Wanham out and DJ Johnson, who actually has been playing pretty well. But now again, we're going to see if the defense can continue to build on that. Do I think they're a great defense? No. Do I think they're an improved defense? Absolutely. But they've got to keep it. They got to keep moving forward and winning on the road against a team they should beat. I mean, listen, New England is a young team like we are. I would say they're probably a little further behind us. But this is a winnable game. They won at Tennessee, New England did, but then they lost at home against Pittsburgh in an ugly game. I don't think we're going to see, if they play Stevenson against us, I'll almost be shocked. He had 2 fumbles last week, led the league in fumbles last year, but they do have Trayvon Henderson, the rookie from Ohio State, who has yet to really do anything. So I think we've got to continue to play defense. And the defense had a huge stop after the Etienne fumble, by the way. That was huge.
They did have a quick turnover change.
Yeah.
They stopped them, held them. And listen, anytime a team shuts a team out in the NFL, that's a building block for the next
confidence
week,
builder,
right? It's a confidence builder because there were plays like that where Atlanta had an opportunity to score. They were down so much they ended up going for it, and the Panthers still came away with a stop. It's not, the goal is not to score 3 points and not embarrass you. So the goal is to win.
Yep. And
when Atlanta had that opportunity, they were still in the game trying to win. So they had to go for it on 4th down. But give credit to the defense for that quick change stop and coming out there and taking care of business at home.
Mm-hmm.
This is going to be on the road.
Yep. And you nailed something. I told you we were watching the game together, and you nailed something earlier a couple weeks ago when you talked about when I was pissed off about how Canales wasn't getting the plays in on time. We were hiking the ball at 0 seconds. We had high snaps, and you said that was still inexcusable. But on the road, it's going to be much tougher. Wait till they play at home, and you won't see that as much. And you were totally right.
There's 2 things that changed at home with those things, right? One, was I don't have to tell the plays in handwritten letters and big numbers to Leggett.
Yep.
Right. We can communicate a little bit more efficiently. I call the play and everybody's lined up where they're supposed to be.
Yep.
And now I can go through my cadence and I can alternate my count. I can alternate my play and I can put my team in the best position to be successful if I'm the quarterback. When you have a guy that doesn't understand where he's supposed to be, where the call comes out of the huddle, what makes you think you're going to be able to communicate with him? So those things weren't, that was one thing. The other thing was being at home and, verbally being able to communicate those things, are going to change. That's not going to happen this week, right? They're going to be on a road in Gillette Stadium where New England is upset, where they lost a game that they felt like they should have won with a young team and a coach that's going to have them fired up. I know Vrabel is going to put those guys and be, browbeating and cracking the whip, against the Patriots. And, I feel like they're chomping at the bit to be able to take their frustration out on the Panthers, when they come in there. Bryce is not going to, if this team is going to win, Bryce is going to have to play better than he did last week. He didn't have to do a lot, and that's a credit to the defense, but when you go on the road, the quarterback has to be a difference maker. You have to be the general out there. He's got to
protect the ball.
And you got to protect the ball.
That's
and those are the things.
You pointed out last week when Bryce ran the ball for the touchdown.
He was holding that thing with two hands.
Yeah, I mean, he had that thing secured like we've never seen before. So we've got to protect the ball. A couple keys that I think we're going to see I mentioned last week about getting Bryce off to a quick start, and I think we did that. This week, I think Drake May has shown in his short career so far that he's prone to throwing the ball to the other team. And the reason he seems to do that is when he gets pressured. Now, he can also take off and run the ball. But the Panthers, the one thing on defense that we haven't done yet is put a lot of pressure on the quarterback.
0 sacks this last week against Atlanta.
Exactly. So this week, especially with Wanham being out, who's our one veteran defensive end who had, 7 sacks last year, we got the young kids in there. We're going to have to find a way to create pressure because Drake has shown he'll turn the ball over if we get pressure. If we don't, then it could be a long day for the defense.
Yeah, it was odd because Penix, from what I've seen of him over the last 3 years, is usually cool, calm, and collected under pressure. He's going to make good decisions. It felt like he was trying to get rid of the ball before he took the sack and making bad decisions, and or the defense was giving him a look and playing differently than maybe what they've shown. And the adjustments just weren't there. A lot of times in coverages, teams will have shown, when they're going to come and where they're going to blitz, they're going to drop back and keep everything in front. It felt like because at home they had an advantage, the crowd was behind them. You weren't going to be able to make those adjustments on the offensive side. You could take more risks and jump those underneath routes, play a little bit firmer, and it surprised Atlanta and surprised the quarterback Penix. So at home again, being able to make those adjustments when you see a team pressing and being able to take the top off, are going to be a little bit easier for the home team to do, which is going to put more pressure on the defense for the Panthers, and they're going to have to respond. Well, if a team makes an adjustment, who's the guy that's going to make the readjustment? You see it all the time with, the cat and mouse between, Ray Lewis and Peyton Manning.
Mm-hmm.
Peyton Manning, Omaha, and Ray Lewis is waiting, or the safeties are waiting for the check, and then they recheck, right? So that's the chess game that takes place, during a game, and it just doesn't feel like the Panthers, have all the pieces in place to go on the road and get a victory.
Well, look, this is a big game for both teams because we always talk about how the NFL coaches like to break the schedule in quarters, and either team, whoever wins this game is going to be 2-2 after the first 4. And I think any fan would have taken that for the Panthers or the Patriots. And if you're a Panther fan, and if you really want to feel good, you get this win. Your next 2 games are at home against the Dolphins, which seems like a winnable game.
Dolphins are struggling right now.
And then on the road at the Jets, which could be a winnable game. So, not that we do, but you feel a lot better at 2-2 than you do at 1-3.
Well, let me ask you a question, right? Because this is, I think, important to kind of get a feeling, right? And a lot of times momentum is a big swinger, a big part of, what you feel. Your team's playing really well. You're going to bet on them a little bit more because, they have the ball rolling in the right direction. Do you believe in Dave Canales? Do you believe that he is going to get these guys motivated on the road? Do you believe that he's the guy that's going to rally the troops, because I am not there yet with him. I still feel like too many pats on the back, too many it's okay, attaboys, versus, hey, this is, you know, we need to have accountability for our mistakes.
I think the jury is still out on him. Here's what I will say.
Do you believe in him?
Yeah, I think the jury's still for me.
Okay.
But here's what I will say. I will say this. When we saw the team the first 2 games get down, especially in Arizona, we were down 20 to whatever it was, 3 or whatever. We didn't quit, and I always look at that, because I'll ask you a question too. I was going to ask earlier when Penix, the last play that he played before they yanked him, when he laid on the ground, he looked like he was just exhausted and just beat up and tired. It wasn't from getting hit. That's for sure. If you're an offensive lineman. And, we always talk about, you always say you watch to see if your linemen are picking the quarterback up, or they helping the running back up. If you're an offensive lineman and you see him after having an awful game, and then he's laying there on the ground, and then they take him out, even though it's 30-0. So I don't argue them getting him out of there so they don't get hurt. However, as a lineman, as part of you go, what? Don't take him out. Get him in here. We need to fix this. We're playing like crap. We need to fix this for next week.
No, I would be a guy that took more responsibility than pointing the finger and saying, anything to do with him. I'm the reason why he's laying on the ground.
Gotcha.
So I think the accountability part for the Falcons is going to have to be, our quarterback was laying on the ground, guys.
Yeah.
That's something that he's the future of this organization.
Our job is to protect him.
Our job is to protect him and make sure he's standing upright after every play. And if he's laying on the ground, then we didn't do our job.
Yep.
Right. That's the way I'm going to look at that. Right now, I don't know if that's the way, modern day football players look at that, and they take it as personal or as passionate as I did. And that's the character of each offensive line and unit is going to have a different characteristic or a different, heartbeat. So I think the Panthers, by the way, do have that mentality.
I do too. I think
their offensive line coach has really brought that, where it becomes second nature in practice, where I'm running down and covering and making sure that we're going to be in the picture when our ball tackler is tackled, where I'm surrounding him and then corralling and making sure that he's coming up with one of his hands in my hand or one of our other guys if I have anything to do with it. When our guys go to the sideline, we're going to have 2 or 3 guys chasing the play, chasing our, to make sure that we're there and, to be that protector or, in case the play happens. So they're playing hard.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to say. I think they're playing hard. They didn't quit when they could have, that second game in particular. I think we also with Canales saw when we did get a lead, I thought he was able to call a more even play, which he's talked about wanting to be able to do that, but you can't when you're losing. But here's what I think about Canales and the Panthers. And this is what I'm really interested to see this weekend. You and I have talked for longer than just the Canales years, but let's just use the Canales years, how this team doesn't have an identity. They're not an offensive juggernaut. Their defense was the worst in the NFL. What is their identity? And in my opinion, if they can bring it on defense, I feel like we're so close to starting to get a little bit of an identity on defense. Now, if they come late, crap the bed against New England, I'll look like an idiot. But I feel like we're so close. And listening to the defensive players talk, Derek Brown to me now has become a vocal leader. J.C. Horn is playing great, one of the best corners of football. And when I listen to him talk, he's a leader. He didn't want to buy into any of the crap or the stats. When I hear, Turk Wharton after the first. So I feel like we're really close to maybe starting to get an identity on defense. We'll see. I mean, they've got to bring it this week on the road, but that's the one thing I give Canales and that team credit for, is that if we listen to all the nice speeches he gives and how it's such a great day and the sun shining and all these things that he's so positive about, he also has talked about, we've got to find an identity. We have to create an identity. It's going to take this game plan and a lot of work to get it. I feel like they're close on defense.
In order to do that, just think about what you're saying, and I agree with everything. They need that, right? That's the one thing we're lacking. Why are they lacking it? Every good team that has an identity has what? A player to identify with, right? Pittsburgh Steelers, who's their player?
JJ Watt.
Who's TJ Watt?
I mean TJ Watt.
Who is the Ravens players?
Oh yeah, I mean all the big teams.
You have players to identify with. Who are the Panthers players that you're identify with on offense?
Yeah, right now that there's
Ted McMillan, maybe
starting
to.
He's got ways to go,
right?
But on defense,
we don't have an identity to build around. We don't have the biggest offensive line. We don't have the Philadelphia Eagles offensive line. We don't have Saquon Barkley.
Yeah.
We don't have a team that says, we're going to line up and pound the ball regardless of what you're in. We're coming at you.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to do the push that the Eagles. That's their identity. We're coming at you. We're running the ball right here, and you can't stop it.
Yep.
Right? I mean, that's intimidating. That's like, if you're a coach, what do you call? I mean, I have 18 guys. I'll go get 3 more guys, and you're still not stopping that play.
Yep.
They have an identity. On defense, right? You have identified around, X, Y, or Z players. The Panthers don't. Derek Brown, maybe. I like J.C. Horn.
I think Derek Brown and J.C. Horn on defense are becoming that. On offense, I don't think we have
DJ,
one yet.
it's the 8th year for Derek Brown. He's playing for his contract.
Well, no. He got his new. This is his 5th year, and he missed last year.
He's playing.
He
This
got
is a
paid.
contract.
He got $100 million contract, so he's not. And him and Jason Horn are paid. They're paid. So,
Okay, so I don't still think that those guys. They're very good players, but they're not. You don't build your identity around a defensive back.
No, but I think Derek Brown and the fact he's being more outspoken and he's throwing dudes around. And I think when you hear him talk about the other defensive linemen that we brought in through free agency, I think that could be the start of it. And I feel like it's close. Again, we'll see. This weekend will be another test, but I do feel on defense, we're at least starting to see a little bit of that. On offense, I don't know. I can't judge them on it when they're down 20
I can even tell you the great teams, the Panthers Super Bowls. When they won Super Bowls.
I mean, did
they have an identity?
Oh, of course.
What was their identity? Great defense, run the football.
Yep.
Right? Jonathan Stewart.
Yep.
League's leading rusher. D'Angelo Williams, leading rusher. Cam Newton.
Yeah.
A dynamic quarterback. When he was in there, you couldn't stop him. Defense, who did they have? Luke Kuechly, Thomas Davis.
Yep.
Up in front, they had Peppers.
Yep.
They had Beeson. They had whatever team that they've had that has done well. They've always had players to identify with. Right, this team doesn't have those players.
Well, again, I think on defense, it could be happening. On offense, I'm with you. Ted McMillan, so far off to a great start. Maybe he'll be the guy. Maybe Bryce continues. We'll see. But you're right. On offense, it's a lot harder. On defense, I feel like
the problem is the problem is with the offense is we don't have that guy at quarterback pulling the trigger to make Ted McMillan the guy. He needs somebody to identify with.
He's made him look pretty good so far. I mean, for a rookie receiver, he's made him look pretty good so far. And Tet, by the way, let's not forget, he's had some bad drops as well. He had he had a huge drop against Arizona. He had another couple last week. So he's a rookie. He's been better than advertised so far. So I think they're on the right track.
I'm not, and this was not a knock on Tet. I think Tet's had probably as good a season as anybody on the offense. This is more an indictment on the offense as a whole. They're not utilizing Chuba enough. There's not a power running game that we're going to say, we're going to establish this run with Chuba Hubbard, right? He's not that guy. And Bryce Young is just, a guy to me that doesn't make guys around him better yet.
Well, we'll see what happens against New England. I'm excited to watch it. I do think that on defense, hopefully they can continue to parlay what they've been doing. And because I will say this about the offense, there's no question that the offense as it stands right now is an offense that, for it to be successful, has got to have the lead and has got to be in decent field position and be able to have an even offense. They're not going to be
balanced. They have to have a balanced offense.
Yeah, exactly. Let's go to picks because I know we're running out of time. We'll fly through these. We'll start off in college football. Florida State at Virginia. We talked about this game earlier.
Am I going? So what's our first off? Let's go through our records.
I made a lot of ground last week.
I know you did. I did well in college football. I think I crapped the bed in pro football.
Well, you're still beating. You're 22-15, and I'm 21-16. So
I'm still ahead.
You got a one-game lead, like my Mets.
Still holding on. I'm going to start running the ball.
Yeah, there you go. Florida State at Virginia. If you want to go first, take that.
Am I taking that? So we're going to alternate, right?
We'll alternate.
And then we get to our 2 picks.
Yep, I'll make my 2. You make your 2.
Those are the difference makers. You're lucky I came up with that for you, so give you a chance to come back. I think you won both
Kansas
of yours
last week was my game of the week, and I nailed that.
Yeah,
one.
so I'm taking Florida State in this one. I think they have way too much firepower. I don't think they're going to look past like a lot of maybe odds makers think. That's the reason why I believe the 7 points, 6.5. If it was 7, I would still take them.
Yeah.
But 6.5, definitely taking Florida State.
I'm with you there. I'm taking Florida State minus 6.5. Notre Dame at Arkansas. I talked about this game earlier as well. Notre Dame land 4.5 on the road. My pick first. I'm going to go Notre Dame, and not because I'm a Notre Dame fan, but I do think that I watched that Arkansas-Memphis game last week, and I think Arkansas is going to score points against this Notre Dame defense, but I think we're going to score as well. I think we're going to be able to run the ball all day long on them to hopefully control the clock some, and I hope that maybe this is the game where we see the Notre Dame defense step up a little bit. I would love that spread a lot better if it was 2.5, but it's 4.5, but I'm going to go Notre Dame.
Who's the home team?
It's Arkansas.
I'm taking Arkansas.
All right.
I'm taking Arkansas. I'm taking the home team in that one.
Yep.
We, for all the reasons we talked about earlier, I'm just not sold on Notre Dame's offense.
Yep. I can't argue it. Alabama at Georgia. Talked about this game earlier as well. Georgia, a surprising to me 2.5-point favorite. I thought it would be more.
I'm taking Georgia. I'm looking at them, and I think DeBoer is one of those pat you on the back type of guys. Him and Canales could throw a tea party together and have a lot of sprinkles and cupcakes, and everybody could have fun.
Rainbow cakes,
and everybody could have fun at that party. But I think Alabama is used to a guy that's going to hold accountable to standards, and if you're not, he's going to let you know. And I think that's really hurt this program with Alabama. And I'm taking Georgia, plus the. Or minus 2.5. 2.5.
I'm with you. So far, we've got one different. I've got Georgia as well. LSU at Ole Miss. We talked about that game earlier. Ole Miss, a 1.5-point favorite. And my gut tells me to take LSU here, but I'm going to ride with Lane Kiffin and their high-powered offense. Their backup quarterback who transferred in, who's been starting the last couple games when the starter got hurt. They're going to keep him in there even though the starter's healthy, which I think is good for their offense because they've been getting better and better. I'm taking Ole Miss laying the points.
LSU has already played a couple of big marquee games. They're not going to be intimidated, going into the Grove. And even though there's going to be a lot of things to be intimidating and looking at as you walk into that stadium, I think that Brian Kelly is going to have them focused. Nusslemeyer, I think, is a guy that he's going to lean on. Their defensive line is.
You're making me want to change my pick.
They're as good as anybody in the country. And I think that LSU wins in a close one.
Because that is a good point. LSU's played Clemson, who, okay, whatever. They've also played Florida, who has a very good defense.
On the road.
And Ole Miss has played nobody. So that's a good point. But I'll stick with Ole Miss for now, but I might put my money on LSU. Auburn at Texas A&M. Texas A&M had a bye week after their huge upset at Notre Dame. They're laying 6.5. Auburn with a tough one on the road last week.
I'm picking first this one, I believe. Those bye weeks are so tricky, aren't they? I mean, it could work for you. It could work against you.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I haven't watched a lot of Auburn this year. So I do think that the bye week, just because that's really a coin flip. I'm Auburn versus who are they playing?
They're playing at Texas A&M.
A&M. Gosh, A&M. I don't know why A&M is a team that I've never been able to, get on board with. I know they have great defenses, but can they score?
Mm-hmm.
That's the thing. But I do think that they're better than Auburn, Texas A&M. They played a big game already this year against Notre Dame and beat them.
I think Texas A&M is really good. I love their coach.
You think they're a top 5 team in the country?
I think their coach is great. I think their quarterback's great. I think they've got maybe the best speed at wide receiver than any team I've seen so far this year. They've got the Concepcion kid from NC State, who's a Charlotte kid. Mm-hmm. They got the other kid on the other side. I can't remember his name. He wore Notre Dame out for about 150 yards. They've got speed everywhere. Their defense is tough. I think Texas, and the Coach Belko's great. Like, I just love the way he's an old school football coach, and I think that he's going to have these guys.
We're both taking A&M.
Both taking A&M. Next game, Oregon at Penn State.
This is your pick.
My pick first. Penn State minus 3.5. I can't stand Penn State.
Minus 3.5?
Yeah, I can't stand Penn State. I never see. They're like we used to with A&M. I just have a hard time buying into Penn State. I know it's going to be a whiteout. I know Penn State's got talent on both sides of the ball. I'm never sold on Oregon either. So this is a really tough game for me. Oregon having to fly all the way across the country too, I think maybe adds a little more difficulty into that. So I'm going to take Penn State minus 3.5. I think again, I'd like that a lot better if I could buy the hook, but I'm going to go Penn State.
Speed kills. Oregon has a lot of speed.
Yep. And I love their quarterback.
And their quarterback can make plays both with his arm and his legs. He's going to have to make a lot with his legs because Penn State at home is going to be hard for Oregon to operate. A lot of things with this West Coast offense and, the spread, the Oregon offense, the Oregon veer that they run, a lot of motions, a lot of, changing of, are they going to be able to stop Penn State in their running attack? I don't think they will. I think Penn State is the better team, especially at home. I think that's going to be the reason why you're the 3.5-point favorites. I think they're about the same team, coin flip, but because of the home field advantage, I'd take Penn State.
Gotcha. So we're the same there. Let's go into the NFL, and then we'll finish up with my 2 and your 2. Chargers at the Giants. Giants make a quarterback change this week. Jackson Dart comes in, the rookie first-round pick they traded up to get. We talked about him a little earlier and how successful he was at Ole Miss. Chargers, to me, and I know you were high on them before the season as well, seem to be one of the best teams in the NFL. It is a short week. They are coming across country. Giants defense, though, is yet to be the defensive line that we all thought they were going to be. And on offense, I don't know. I think the offensive coordinator for the Giants has been horrible. I do think Jackson Dart will probably be able to make some more plays with his legs than Russell can, but I can't take the Giants in this game. I got to go Chargers 6.5.
I think he's going to be the difference maker in this game. I think you're going to see the offense dumb down a little bit, and you're going to see Jackson Dart take off. Russell Wilson has been a guy, last week he had hit some big passes down the field. But before that, he keeps everything in front and it's checked down. And, where he's made his money in the NFL when he was with Seattle was keeping plays alive, keeping his eyes down the field. He wasn't really a guy that was going to take off and run like Vic or, run like Lamar Jackson or, one of those guys. He's going to keep the play alive, keep his eyes down the field, but he can't throw the ball down the field anymore. So there was a big reason for that change and, bring a little spark to that offense. And, I think they're going to have a little bit of spark, but I just don't think they have enough, to beat the Chargers. Harbaugh is, I think, one of the best coaches in the NFL. He's a quarterback whisperer. He has his quarterback playing great. They have a physical team. They're going to run the football. And I just think that they're too much. I take the Chargers.
I agree with that. Next game, your pick first. Vikings at the Steelers. Minnesota -2.5.
Vikings have been awful this year, haven't they?
Well, they got whooped by the Falcons, but then last week they rebounded with a big win with Carson Wentz
against Cincinnati.
Yeah,
I mean Cincinnati.
That was a battle of basically quarterbacks.
Right. And that's I think
Minnesota did score 2 defensive touchdowns as well last week.
Do you know where that game is at?
It's in Pittsburgh.
No.
Oh, it's in Dublin or
it's in Ireland.
That's right, it's in Ireland.
You know which fan base travels and goes farther and more well known than any other fan base, and maybe the Dallas Cowboys.
Yep.
Are the Steelers.
Yep.
The Steelers play well in these away games because it's going to feel like a home crowd. I like the Steelers in a close one. My good friend Joe Moss is going to be there.
Oh, nice.
With Uncle Kev. And they flew out a couple days ago. They got stuck in an airport for 24 hours.
Oh, my God.
In Philadelphia, I believe.
Oh, my God.
So imagine being stuck in an airport and then having to get on a plane.
Charlotte.
having to get back on a plane and go another 20 hours to get there.
Man.
But they're going to have a great time. And I know that they're going to be, waving their terrible towels. And I think there'll be a lot of people else out there waving their terrible towels. I like Pittsburgh in this one.
I'm going to take Minnesota. I know they've got a backup quarterback. I know they got a backup running back. I think Pittsburgh's defense is bad. I think offensively, Aaron Rodgers, can still sling it if he doesn't have to move a foot or left or right. But I just haven't been impressed with Pittsburgh at all. I mean, they barely beat the Jets. I mean, I just think that Minnesota, that guy can coach. And I like Minnesota laying the 2.5. Next game. I can't even read my own handwriting here. The Colts versus the Rams. Colts come in undefeated, no turnovers, no punts. Rams coming off a heartbreaking loss against the Eagles, 2 blocked punts in the fourth quarter, including the one that would have won the game for them. Rams are laying 3.5 back home against the undefeated Colts. Who you got? Oh, is it my pick first? Or
it's your pick first.
I'm going the Rams. I mean, I think the Colts have everything you want in a good football team. They run the ball. Their defense has been solid. They're not turning the ball over. Daniel Jones has looked great with a actual offensive line. But I think McVay's the kind of coach that when you come off that heartbreaking loss, he's the kind of guy that's going to get those guys refocused, understanding that this is a big game for them to get back off, to get off the snide. And I'm going to take the Rams laying 3.5.
The Rams have a young defense. And a lot of times when you have young players, one game could beat you twice because they're so disappointed, or it could absolutely flip the script. And I agree with you because McVay is a good coach. I think he's a good motivator. I think they have a young, talented, up and coming defense. I think they turned around, and I think that the Colts are going to punt for the first time this year.
Yeah.
And I think they're going to get scored on, multiple times, playing in LA. And I think that the Rams win, pretty convincingly, probably by 10 points.
I'm with you on that. Ravens at the Chiefs. Ravens coming off a tough loss as well against Detroit. They lost at home. Ravens defense has looked really bad, which we don't see that often. Detroit did whatever they wanted to do with them. Ravens are laying 2.5 at Kansas City. Kansas City coming off a win over the Lapless Giants this past Monday night. And they still didn't look great doing it. Their defense is playing really good. I think this is where the Chiefs start to put together their little run. I'm going to take the Chiefs as an underdog here, getting 2.5.
Yeah, if Patrick Mahomes, this could be. This is what we thought could be, the AFC Championship matchup before the season. And you talk about disappointing, teams up to this point. Both teams feel like, it's a must win, but it's really not. I mean, they have a whole schedule ahead of them, but because of the division the Ravens play in, I think it's a little bit more of an urgency for them because of, the teams that, are doing well. But the Chiefs are at home. It's tough to play. Arrowhead's one of the loudest stadiums in the entire NFL. Derek Thomas going to have his mom's out there. She's going to be cooking them ribs and, the tailgating and getting that team ready to go. I'm taking the Chiefs in this one in a close one.
There we go. All right. This game next, Philadelphia at Tampa Bay. This is an interesting game because both teams have slid by at the end to win their games. Baker Mayfield has taken his team down with 1.5 minutes left in all 3 games to get the victory.
You put some money on that last week.
I did. Right when they went down. Here he goes.
And he was still, the odds were still against him.
Yeah.
To
it was
go
like
there
minus
and do it.
120.
Yeah.
And Philadelphia, we saw how they won last week, the blocked field goals. They barely got by Dallas early in the year. They went to Kansas City and won. They're doing enough to win, but this is a game of 2 teams that it makes you think this should be a tight game. At the end of the day, I believe in Philadelphia more than I do. I hate, again, laying 3.5 points because I do think it's going to be a close game, but I'm going to take the Eagles.
Yeah, I mean, the Eagles are just a team that, they find a way to get it done. And you look at either their offense, their offensive line, they get into short yards. Those are turnovers, and those are momentum changers. 4th and 1, 4th and 2, and maybe even 4th and 3. Hell, they had the push into the end zone where Hurts was all like 3 yards into the end zone on the 2-yard line. And, it's just they have the bigger, faster, stronger guys. They have a good coach. And I think they have a belief that they're going to win. I'm taking the Eagles.
Gotcha. Last game before we get into our 2 each is the Panthers at New England. New England is laying 5.5. You go first on this one.
I'm taking New England. I think I still haven't seen a lot of improvement. Even though they shut the Falcons out, I think the Falcons had a lot to do with that. It's on the road. This team has not communicated well on the road. With the injuries in place, I think Bryce Young's going to struggle. In New England, their fans are going to be loud and rowdy. I think New England bounces back, and they think they win handily.
I'm taking the 5.5. To me, even if the Panthers lose,
is that the biggest spread of the weekend?
No. Yeah, I think it is one of the biggest ones.
So, definitely that tells you what the odds makers think.
Chargers are 6.5 over the Giants, but I just think 5.5 points are too much. I think even if the Panthers lose, it'll be a tight game. Since the 9-minute mark of the 3rd quarter against Arizona, the Panthers have outscored their opponents 49-0. Their defense has been a lot better against the run. Our cornerbacks have been.
You're taking the Panthers then, huh?
I'm taking the points. Yeah, I'm not saying they're going to win. I'm taking the points. I hope they win, but I'm taking the points there. I have seen some improvement, in my opinion. I think the second half against Arizona, we saw what they're capable of doing on both sides of the ball, and then they parlayed that into the Atlanta game. I think Atlanta, obviously Penix didn't play well, but I think you have to give the Panthers some credit as to why they didn't play as well on offense as they had been playing, coming off a huge win at Minnesota. So I'm taking the Panthers, getting 5.5.
Here's the interesting thing about the Patriots. Who's their leading rusher?
Gosh, well, Stevenson. Drake May
is their leading rusher.
Yeah,
21 carries. He has 1 touchdown, but he's
5 turnovers
87 yards
against the Steelers. So
they had 5 turnovers and still almost won that game.
Yeah.
He has 87 yards, and that's their leading rusher. Hunter Henry is a guy who's their leading receiver. As a tight end.
Yeah.
So they're struggling. So the Panthers, if they're going to continue to try to gain momentum, they have a perfect opportunity.
That's why I like the
to
points,
take advantage against the Patriots.
Be a
low scoring game.
Yeah, I think it'll be a tight game. All right, now let's go to my year two, and then we're done for the day. My first pick is going to be let's see. Oh, where is the first pick? My first pick is going to be the Florida State. No, gosh, now I'm confused because I know you changed. Let's go with your two.
Bottom.
I know what your two are. You've got Houston at Oregon State. Houston's laying 13 and a half.
This is the Oregon State that you thought was playing Penn State earlier. Oregon State's awful. They got blown out early in the season, 13.5 points. Houston's 3-0 going into Corvallis. It's literally a lumber mill town. Nothing there except for the Houston Cougars are going to lay that whooping on them Beavers.
All right, and then your second game,
beat them Beavers up.
Your second game is Kentucky at South Carolina. South Carolina off to a bad start this season so far. They're at home, laying 5.5.
South Carolina bounces back. I think that they're going to continue. Sellers, at home. Kentucky's not the same Kentucky. They whooped up on them pretty good last year. Kentucky has not run the ball like they have been able to. South Carolina's defense is not very good, but playing at home is a place where they're going to correct that a little bit, and having Sellers out there, keeping the defense off the field, keeping those drives alive. This is where Sellers really started becoming, a playmaker last year, and I think that that's going to continue to exist this week. Look for, their big receiver who's as fast as any player in the country to have a big game. Some play action passes. They've run the ball well, but if they get him going,
not against Missouri last week, they didn't run the ball at all. I think they had -9 yards rushing for the game. Because on the road is completely different. Missouri whooped up on them pretty good. Yeah.
And, South Carolina didn't look like they belonged in that game.
Well, I'm going to go NFL for one game. You got the Redskins at Atlanta. No Jaden Daniels, no McLaurin for Washington.
I thought your game was going to be the Huskies.
That's the second one. So I'm going to Atlanta.
Oh, it's your first one.
Yeah, I'm going Atlanta, getting the points at home against the Redskins.
Okay.
I think Atlanta gets back on the right foot this week. And then I got Ohio State at the your Washington Huskies. I just think Ohio State laying 7.5. To me, their defense is so good that I think that if they can score 24 points, they'll cover the spread.
You're talking about
Ohio State.
Yeah.
So I'm going to take Ohio State laying the 7.5 as my second one.
Husky Stadium is loud as any place you're going to see in the country. Both teams are undefeated right now. Washington hasn't played, nearly the same caliber team Ohio State has.
All Ohio State played was Texas, and they haven't turned out to be that good. So you're right.
But they have all. This is where you see. The star player, take over
Jeremiah
the game. Jeremiah Smith, the Huskies just don't have an answer for him, and not many people do.
Yeah.
Big, physical, fast, freak of nature. I think the last time I think we have a winning record against Ohio State. I think we are 4-2 against them in the last 6 meetings. Going back to when they had some good players, they have not fared well in Washington. But I think that they take care of business, and I think they win by 10 points.
That'll be a fun game to watch too, just because, Washington 2 years ago was in the national championship. Last year they lose their coach, they lose 30 players. The fact they're off to another good start this year.
They haven't played
and then Ohio State, that's true, but Ohio State really hasn't either. Texas hasn't looked too good either.
Ohio State's the number one team in the country.
I'm with you. That's why I'm taking them. Let's thank you, Big D, for all your help today. We had a little technical issue.
Am I trying to buy a win there, maybe?
Maybe you are. I mean, you almost have me convinced. I'm going to change my damn. You got me convinced that I'm betting LSU right when we get off the show. Thanks to Big D for everything today, buddy. Everybody have a good weekend. A lot of good games. We'll be back Monday talking the Ryder Cup. Hopefully the United States gets back on track this afternoon. Panther game, great college games. Have a good weekend.